The red carpet glistened under a sea of flashbulbs, the air thick with perfume, prestige, and pretense. The Gala of Legends was in full swing, A-list celebrities, billionaires, political elites. But just outside the entrance, Pauletta Washington stood frozen, her invitation clutched in her hand, her expression a mixture of disbelief and simmering grace. A young attendant, barely out of college and blinded by his headset protocol, blocked her path. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said stiffly. "You're not on the list." She lifted her chin. "I'm Pauletta Washington. The invitation is right here." He glanced at it, shrugged. "This one's invalid. It doesn't have the updated QR. You'll have to step aside." A few onlookers, mostly influencers and press, began to whisper. Cameras turned, phones raised. One audibly chuckled, "Even Denzel's wife can't skip the line." But she didn't raise her voice. Didn't call anyone. Instead, she stepped aside and stood, as Grace turned to quiet fury. Inside the gala, Stephen Colbert was mid-monologue, cracking jokes about AI presidents and avocado politics, when his producer whispered into his ear. Colbert's eyes widened. Wait, Denzel's wife was denied entry? Denzel Washington, seated just a few rows from the stage, stood immediately. His presence was seismic. The music stuttered. Conversations paused. He didn't rush. He walked, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the exit. Outside, just as Pauletta was about to call an Uber, the crowd parted like silk. Denzel emerged through the doors. His gaze swept past the reporters, past the glitter, until it landed on her. "Did they really turn you away?" he asked, voice low but edged. She nodded once. "No drama. Just the truth." Denzel turned, face sharp as a blade, and walked right up to the same attendant. "You denied her entry. You insulted my family." I was following protocol, sir." "No," Denzel said, his voice now cutting through the entire courtyard. "You followed arrogance." Then, he looked at the cameras now swarming the scene. "And now, the whole world's watching." The scene outside the gala shifted instantly. What had moments ago been a routine embarrassment became a public reckoning. The press cameras zoomed in like vultures circling a spectacle, but Denzel didn't flinch, he didn't perform. He spoke with the raw calm of a man who had seen too much to tolerate nonsense. "I don't care who's inside," Denzel said, his voice firm, unshaken. "This isn't about celebrity access. This is about respect." The young attendant stammered, stepping backward, clutching his tablet like a shield. "Sir, look, I didn't mean." Denzel stepped closer, not threatening, just towering. "You think it's fine to dismiss a woman based on your list? Let me ask, who made the list? And why does it change for people like her?" Security began to shuffle awkwardly. Event organizers whispered into earpieces. Inside the ballroom, the buzz had reached fever pitch. Stephen Colbert, sensing the drama unfolding, paused the show. He turned to the audience and quipped, "Well folks, I think the real headline is happening at the entrance." Back outside, Pauletta put a hand gently on Denzel's arm. "Let's just leave." But Denzel shook his head. "No. Not tonight." Then he turned, facing the mass of reporters. "My wife was denied entry not because she lacked credentials, but because some gatekeepers forget that dignity doesn't wear a designer label." A reporter shouted, "Mr. Washington, are you accusing the organizers of profiling?" Denzel didn't hesitate. "I'm accusing them of forgetting who built this culture. Who paved the way. You don't get to erase the people who made this country shine just because they don't come wrapped in your version of glamour." The words landed like thunder. People inside the gala began leaving their tables, peering out the grand windows. The atmosphere turned electric. And just as the organizers began to scramble to invite her back in with hollow apologies, Denzel raised a hand. "She's not stepping into that room because of your permission," he said. "She's stepping into it because she never needed it in the first place." And then, he took her hand. And together, they walked back through the front doors, not as guests, but as a statement. Denzel stepped into the dealership like a storm contained in a tailored suit. The moment the glass doors closed behind him, every head in the room turned, not because of his fame, but because of the fury etched across his face. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on the manager, and each step echoed like a countdown. "Which one of you humiliated my wife?" he asked, voice calm but razor-sharp. The staff exchanged nervous glances. The manager, a man in his 40s with slicked-back hair and a forced smile, stepped forward. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We simply followed standard protocol." "Protocol?" Denzel snapped. "Your protocol was to treat her like a nobody because she walked in without makeup or security?" The manager tried to maintain composure, but his voice faltered. "Mr. Washington, we had no idea who she was." "That's the point," Denzel said. "You shouldn't have to know her name to treat her with basic respect." The tension in the room grew unbearable. Customers paused their conversations. Salesmen froze mid-pitch. A nearby woman subtly began filming on her phone. "My wife came in to buy a car," Denzel continued, "not to audition for your approval. She left in tears. Do you know how hard that is to do? To make that woman cry?" The manager tried to respond again, but Denzel cut him off. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here because this place needs to understand something fundamental: dignity is not optional." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The weight of his words pressed down like gravity. The air was thick, and no one dared interrupt him. "Tomorrow morning," he added, "a video of this encounter will be trending. Not because I want revenge. But because maybe, just maybe, someone in your shoes will watch it and think twice before they judge a woman by her outfit, or her silence." And with that, he turned on his heel, walking out with the same quiet authority he walked in with, leaving behind silence, shame, and a room full of people who knew they just witnessed something that would echo far beyond the showroom floor. The next morning, the video Denzel had warned about was everywhere. It lit up every feed: Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube. A shaky clip, captured by a customer sitting near the espresso machine, showed Denzel standing tall in the middle of the dealership, speaking not with anger, but with clarity, purpose, and pain. News anchors dissected every second of the footage. Pundits couldn't agree whether it was a celebrity overreaction or a long-overdue message to luxury gatekeepers. But viewers? They knew what they saw. A man defending the dignity of someone he loved, with zero theatrics, zero self-promotion. And as the internet raged with opinions, a second video dropped. This one wasn't shaky. It was professionally shot. Denzel in his study, staring into the camera, no script, no lighting tricks. He spoke. "When we talk about respect, we like to imagine it's built into our systems. That if you walk into a nice place, you'll be treated nicely. But what we forget is, these systems still have people running them. And people come with bias." He paused. "Let the silence speak. My wife didn't walk into that dealership to make a statement. She walked in to surprise me with a gift. The only surprise was how small some people still think a black woman is when she walks in alone." The clip ended with one line, simple white text on a black screen. "Character is how you treat someone who can't help you." Within an hour, that line was trending. Dealerships across the country began issuing internal memos. A former employee from the same chain posted anonymously, confirming that what Denzel described wasn't rare, it was routine. And the internet exploded. This wasn't just a celebrity moment anymore. It had become a movement. And it was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, the ripple had turned into a storm. The dealership's official statement, cold, vague, and full of, if anyone was offended, language, only poured gasoline on the fire. Denzel's followers weren't interested in corporate damage control. They wanted accountability. Meanwhile, networks scrambled. Morning shows lined up experts on race, retail bias, and celebrity activism. But when The Late Spotlight with Stephen Colbert announced a full-segment sit-down with Denzel, the country tuned in. Live. Studio packed. Energy electric. Colbert opened with charm. "I've got Denzel Washington here. He's been trending more than Taylor Swift this week, not for a new movie, but for a moment that hit harder than any performance he's given." Laughter. Applause. Then Colbert leaned forward. "So, what was going through your mind when you walked into that dealership?" Denzel didn't blink. "What went through my mind was, I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to walk into a place to validate my wife's worth. But I did. Because that's the world we're still living in." The room fell quiet. Colbert cleared his throat. "Do you think that moment speaks to something bigger?" "It always does," Denzel said. "It's never just about a car. It's about how we rank human beings. Who gets courtesy without credentials? Who gets questioned at the door?" The audience erupted. But it was the next line that carved itself into headlines the next day. "We don't want special treatment," Denzel said. "We want equal footing. And until that happens, I'll keep walking into rooms they don't want us in." The crowd rose. Applause thundered. And just like that, a private humiliation had sparked a national reckoning. The moment Denzel re-entered the dealership floor, something had changed in him. His steps were slower, but heavier, each footfall carried not just weight but intention. The manager's voice, once dismissive and cool, now trembled at the sight of his return. "You're back, Mr. Washington," the manager said, attempting a smile that barely masked his nerves. Denzel didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked directly toward the red sports coupe where Pauletta had been humiliated. She stood nearby, trying to steady her breath, but the residue of embarrassment still hung over her like a heavy coat. "I want everyone to hear this," Denzel said, turning to address the small crowd of employees and a few wealthy customers. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried a force no microphone could replicate. "This woman," he pointed gently to Pauletta, "isn't just my wife. She's my legacy. And today, you all decided she wasn't worthy of respect because she didn't walk in wearing labels you recognize. Because she didn't perform wealth." Silence fell like a curtain. Even the clicking keyboards at the finance desk stopped. A younger salesman shifted uncomfortably. The manager took a cautious step forward. "Mr. Washington, we..." Denzel held up a hand. "No. Don't sanitize this. You smiled at her ring, sir," he said sharply. "You dismissed her. You looked at her skin, her clothes, her quiet grace, and saw less. What you didn't see was the woman who stood by me when I had nothing. Who raised our children. Who taught me that dignity is not about diamonds." The crowd watched, transfixed. "You thought you were dealing with someone unimportant. But what you actually did," Denzel said, walking right up to the manager, "was show the world what kind of man you are." Pauletta, still silent, placed a hand over her chest, her wedding ring catching the light. There were tears, but not from pain. From pride. And just when it seemed the room couldn't get quieter, Denzel leaned in, speaking lower. "You smiled at her ring. I smiled at your ignorance." He turned to leave. But not before tossing a black envelope onto the nearest desk. "That's a full-page ad by tomorrow's front page of the New York Times. It says, 'Don't mistake silence for weakness.' With your company's logo below it." Gasps rippled through the room. This wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning. The envelope Denzel had left behind sat on the desk like a ticking clock. A senior associate slowly opened it while the others huddled in curiosity and dread. Inside was the finalized design of the newspaper ad, signed personally by Denzel. "Don't mistake silence for weakness," it read in bold serif font over a black and white photo of Pauletta, not in designer clothes or diamond-studded heels, but smiling, standing with quiet grace, hand on her hip, wedding ring shining proudly. Beneath it, the dealership's logo, unapologetically visible. The manager paled. He can't actually run this. But everyone in the room knew better. Word traveled fast. Within hours, the dealership's name began trending on social media. People weren't just angry, they were furious. Black Twitter, celebrities, activists, and working mothers alike were sharing the ad and retweeting Denzel's stand. It was no longer just about Paletta. It had become a symbol for every moment someone had been quietly dismissed, undervalued, or overlooked for not looking the part. Paletta remained mostly quiet through the unfolding storm, but behind the scenes, something extraordinary was happening. A women's rights organization reached out to her, asking if she would be the keynote speaker at their next summit. "Your dignity spoke louder than any protest," their message read. Meanwhile, Denzel was flooded with messages from powerful figures: Oprah, Viola Davis, even Michelle Obama. Each of them offered their support, applauding not just what he said, but how he said it. As the pressure mounted, the dealership issued a formal apology. But it felt hollow. A PR stunt, not a sincere act of accountability. Then came the real twist. A whistleblower from within the company leaked a string of internal emails revealing that this wasn't the first time such behavior had occurred. In fact, Paletta's treatment was part of a long-standing pattern. The dealership had a reputation, just never one that reached headlines. Until now. The media dubbed it the ring incident. But for Denzel, it was never about the ring. It was about the line. The one they crossed. And the one he wouldn't let them erase. News vans lined up outside the dealership by morning. Cameras flashed. Reporters crowded the entrance, hoping for a glimpse of someone, anyone, from inside. But no one emerged. The staff had been ordered to stay quiet, as corporate lawyers scrambled behind the scenes. Inside Denzel's home, though, the energy was the opposite. Calm. Steady. Focused. He sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through messages on his phone. A video clip of Paletta's interaction at the dealership, recorded quietly by a bystander, had now reached over 20 million views. People didn't just sympathize. They saw themselves in her silence, her forced composure. And they saw hope in the way Denzel chose to respond, not with chaos, but with clarity. "You never raised your voice," a journalist said in an interview request. "You just told the truth." Paletta, sitting across from him, raised an eyebrow. "That scares people more than yelling ever could." The statement landed like a stone in a still pond. That afternoon, Denzel and Paletta were invited to appear on a special segment of the Colbert Report. Stephen Colbert, typically sharp-tongued and witty, opened the episode with a tone rarely seen from him. "When a woman walks into a dealership," he said, "she deserves the same respect as any man in a three-piece suit." Today's guests reminded us what quiet power looks like. Denzel and Paletta stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. Colbert cut straight to the heart: why not sue them for millions? Why just an ad? Denzel leaned forward. Because lawsuits stay in courtrooms. But truth? That travels. The audience clapped. Loud. Long. "But I'll be honest," Denzel continued. "This wasn't just about Paletta. This was about a system that ranks people by fabric labels and credit scores. A system where silence gets mistaken for consent." Colbert nodded. "You turned a private insult into a public mirror." Then he turned to Paletta. "And you? You didn't flinch. That takes power." She smiled gently. "I learned a long time ago, some rooms only stay quiet so long as we stay quiet in them." The crowd rose to their feet. The dealership CEO, watching from a penthouse across the city, knew the company had lost more than a customer. They'd lost credibility. And it wouldn't be the last. This was no longer a story. It was a signal. The ripple effect began faster than anyone predicted. By the next morning, several major car brands released carefully worded public statements that didn't name the dealership, but everyone knew what they were referring to. "We are reviewing all customer service policies," one read. Another added, "Discrimination in any form is unacceptable." But it was too late. The public had already made up its mind. A hashtag exploded, #Paletta deserved better. Within hours, it trended globally. Talk shows across the country picked it up. Panelists debated the issue of implicit bias in luxury spaces. Radio hosts played Denzel's interview soundbites between songs. One major influencer, with over 15 million followers, posted, "Respect isn't a perk. It's a baseline." Denzel reminded us of that. But the most powerful moment came not on air, but online. Denzel posted a single photo. It showed Pauletta, not walking out of the dealership, but walking into a local school's arts program the next day. No caption. Just her standing in front of a group of students, speaking with poise and presence. It was a message: redirect the spotlight. Later that night, a major media network invited the dealership's CEO to speak. The anchor's tone was cold. "Your company is hemorrhaging reputation," he said bluntly. "Do you deny what happened?" The CEO, clearly coached, replied, "We're committed to learning and growing. But I believe Mr. Washington has used this moment to elevate a much-needed conversation. We take responsibility." But behind the scenes, PR damage control wasn't enough. Denzel had ignited something that couldn't be managed, a standard. He and Pauletta declined dozens of commercial offers, brand partnerships, and endorsements. "We're not selling a moment," Pauletta said. "We're protecting its meaning." Meanwhile, letters and emails poured into their foundation. One woman wrote, "I never saw myself in those rooms, until Pauletta walked into one and didn't shrink." Another, "I realized I've been quiet too long. Thank you for making me braver." Denzel read each one out loud at dinner, his voice steady, sometimes breaking. "It was never about the car," he whispered to Pauletta. She nodded. "It was about the drive." And in that sentence, the entire country leaned forward. Because in a world chasing outrage, they had delivered something else. Dignity with teeth. Weeks passed. The dealership quietly shut down 4 renovations. But no rebranding campaign could erase what people now remembered every time they drove past it, that moment Pauletta Washington stood, tall and unshaken, when she could have walked away in silence. Then came the awards season. Denzel was set to receive a Lifetime Achievement honor at a prestigious arts gala in New York. But what happened on stage wasn't in the script. After the standing ovation died down, Denzel approached the podium slowly, scanning the crowd of celebrities, executives, activists, and cameras. He didn't speak immediately. He placed the golden statue down beside him. Then he looked into the crowd, his voice raw. "You gave me this for what I've done on camera, but let me tell you what mattered most happened off camera." The room leaned in. It wasn't the movies. It was watching my wife walk into a place built to shrink her, and stand taller than the architecture. Murmurs echoed. "I've fought villains, played heroes, won trophies. But the real power? That's seeing injustice and not blinking." He paused. "You all praised me for being dignified. For holding back. But maybe what this country needs isn't more poise, it's purpose with fire. Not calm men, but clear men. And women like Pauletta who don't need a mic to change the narrative." The applause began slow. Then erupted. Pauletta stood in the crowd. No spotlight on her, but all eyes found her anyway. Later that evening, reporters swarmed the red carpet. "Mr. Washington, any message for the dealership?" He smiled slightly, then said, "Yeah. Tell them we upgraded." "Upgraded what?" "Our expectations." By morning, Denzel's words were everywhere. Clips of the speech flooded TikTok and Instagram. Late-night hosts replayed the phrase, "We don't need calm men, we need clear men." But the biggest shift didn't come from celebrities. It came from people. Barbershops. Classrooms. Dinner tables. Men told their sons, "You see that? That's how you speak up." Women whispered to their daughters, "That's how you hold ground." A single moment at a dealership had turned into a cultural mirror. Because this wasn't about fame or cars or press tours. It was about what happens when the quietest disrespect meets the loudest clarity. Denzel didn't need to shout. He just stood still. And the whole world heard him. Sometimes, power doesn't scream, it just stands. And in a world obsessed with noise, Denzel reminded us that clarity cuts deeper than volume. This wasn't just about a luxury car. It was about the cost of silence, and the value of dignity. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard.